Email he sent inadvertently to all trustees, to the trustee email. So, oh yeah.
You gotta. Oh, did you start that stuff yet?
I have. Sorry.
No problem. We're gonna have to do a little rearrangement, and that's why we started early, because we kind of tweaked the configuration of the room.
Looks pretty normal though.
We need things like the podium and.
Oh, right. Did I help with anything? No. You're fine. Kathy, did you hear about anybody wanting to make public comments tonight?
This is gonna be way skewed. So that table wasn't there. That table has not been here.
Okay.
We have to put that table here.
Right.
So let me know if you want me to
You
move
want
it.
to make me the
Post.
figure out the camera.
Oh, no. Everybody.
Hi,
Live on YouTube.
already.
What do you say? I like YouTube better than Facebook.
Aren't they owned by the same company at this point?
I think Facebook owns everything, the whole internet. And now it's the metaverse.
It's the opposite of whatever they touch turns to gold.
Yeah, whatever it turns to ground. Yeah, the universe was not enough for them. They don't have much of an insurance.
Is that seriously? Did they purchase YouTube?
Oh, no, no.
So I feel like it's probably back in the day, it's still back.
You can go back probably later. Move your body this way. Yeah, I think that's good. You can't see us, but you can see the table.
Catherine, how are you?
Mark, good, how are you?
Good. Cold? Coming to take our treats tomorrow.
You can see the podium.
Yeah. Perfect.
We have seedless cottonwood, 23, 24 years
You'll
old.
still be able to see whoever's
Yeah,
right
the
here.
roots are growing everywhere.
It just looks weird. It
We
looks
had
like
Mike
it's a
to turn
TV
over,
set to
take a
me.
look at it.
It just-
What she would do for any citizen who asked. Yeah, he said,
The elms. They're bad last year.
he said, you know, we could wait a year or two. I was like, let's just get it done. It's not going to be any cheaper a year or two from now.
So just be aware that your mics probably aren't on and to turn them on when the meeting starts, please. You can, but we're on YouTube right now, so it's up to you.
Saw the latest.
Yes, sir, that's all right.
Before, like this double view of but then it just makes it.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
Hey, Bo, did you have a name file?
Oh, really? Awesome.
Hey, moving up and.
Ooh, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't send you the packet till later today.
Oh, no, it's fine. What's going on? I know I had extra sweet.
Hi Kathy, how are you?
Good. Right. I think we're good. Yeah.
Pull it back up where it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Kathy, can you email me another copy of the agenda?
You just want mine?
I can't find it.
Here. Oh, I don't have one.
Oh,
I
then,
can go get
then
one.
never mind.
I can
I
go
thought
get
that was,
one.
no, 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 no.
It was just from my packet. I can go get one.
No, no,
Take me 2 minutes.
no, it's okay.
I know I read it.
Don't forget to turn your mics on when the meeting starts. Hi, Erica. Hi. Just wait for Kathy to come back. Oh, there she is.
I'm waiting for you.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to sneak up on you. You ready to start the recording? Okay.
Bud's got a nameplate now.
That's official.
Well, I'm like,
Cool. I like that.
definitely gonna put that up in my college dorm.
Have you decided where that dorm's gonna be yet?
I have not decided yet.
Okay,
I'm gonna have to like actually travel and see him.
it's not a bad idea.
Cause you can't really get like an effective read or like on what happens at each college without visiting them. So,
$100 grand. Who cares what it's like?
yeah. It's only $100,000 going away, or, you know.
Lucky.
Getting off easy,
Yeah,
100 grand. That's community college.
or cheap. Maybe that's what I am.
No idea.
All right. Well, it being 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Kathy, will you do roll call?
Marty Silverstein. Dan Richardson,
Here?
Heather Henry,
Here.
Ben Baumhoff.
Here.
Lonnie Kitching,
Here.
Luis Ianis.
Here.
Erica Sparhawk.
Here.
All right. Item number 2 on the agenda is our consent agenda. Item A is accounts payable. B is trustee minutes from October 12th, regular meeting. Item C is recommendation for approval to Carbondale Public Arts Commission. Item D is a liquor license renewal for Fat Tie. Item E is a liquor license renewal for Atina Bar and Grill. Item F is a liquor license renewal for Silo. And item G is a liquor license renewal for Black Nugget. Kathy, you've been extra busy. Any questions on the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Luis, seconded by Lonnie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion passes. Thanks. Item number 3 is persons present not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience? Looks like Joanna's here. Joanna, you know the drill. 3 minutes. Just tell us your name and where you're from and let us know what's on your mind.
All right, Joanne Teeple, 192 North 10th Street. I am a member of the tree board. I was able to look at the plans for the 8th Street sidewalks last week as a member of the tree board. I am here as a private citizen pedestrian today. I'm here to question the use of the sidewalks. Is it a good use of the town money to actually go through with this? I spent an hour last week from 4 to 5 on last Thursday on the 21st. I saw one person walk on the street besides myself. I walked down to Village and then back up. I went down on the east side and back up on the west side. One person walking. This is when kids are out, people coming back and forth from work. It was horrifically noisy. There was an awful lot of traffic. And when we look at it, it's 6 feet on either side. It goes from property line out. I have a question about maintenance. Everybody else is responsible for shoveling their own sidewalks, and everyone is to not put their snow into the street. We've got a lot of walls, fences, etc. I am questioning who will do the snow removal, where will it go? How is the ice going to be controlled? How will this be enforced? And I was walking over here. We have the block over to the upside here, the east side. There's no sidewalk on Colorado. There's no Colorado sidewalk from the intersection of 8th and Colorado on either side. And I question whether it's a wise use to put 2 sidewalks that in a place where it's obviously not getting that much pedestrian use and you already have some place in there, whereas we have other places where you have nowhere to walk. Colorado is a truck route. There's no safe place to walk at that intersection on the west side of that street. So I am not going to go with the Field of Dreams philosophy that if you build it, they will come walk. So I'm urging you to consider if this is really a wise move when you actually have one sidewalk there and people aren't shoveling their walks in the winter.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you.
I will just say that an enormous amount of thought and effort has gone into this project, not only for the reasons why, but also what's going into it. So, and now is not the time to discuss it, but I'm happy to
Right.
discuss that offline. And
Okay, I just wanted to state for the record that
Great.
from what I'm seeing, it's $500,000. Think twice, please. Thank you.
And also we do have it in our capital improvement plan to build a sidewalk here to connect the one you're talking about. So can't remember if that's next year or the year after, but it's in there. So.
All right, thank you.
Right. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address us on an item not on the agenda? Can't see who's up there. Do you guys know who's on the?
Susan Ray and Elizabeth is one of the.
For P and Z. Okay.
P&Z.
So not seeing anyone else, we'll close this agenda item. Move on number 4 to number 4, trustee comments. Nobody's got nothing. Bowden, nothing? It's homecoming week. You got nothing to report?
Well, let's just say it went off fantastically. So,
Coming court, is that worth announcing?
I mean, I'm
Okay. All right. All right. Just
Dan,
checking.
you succeeded in making him blush.
Yeah, okay. That's my goal. All right. Any other comments?
I do. I attended the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, the first part of the retreat on Thursday. The rest of it was on Friday. And I had other obligations. But just wanted to give an update. It was going to be an in-person, but it ended up being a virtual retreat. And they did a really good job of making sure everybody's getting to know each other and know who the partners are and what resources, because it's a network as well, and kind of what resources we can all tap. And it's now up to 40 members. So that was also really exciting. And I was in a small breakout group with Wheat Ridge. It was their first meeting, and kind of welcoming them and giving them a lay of the land of how it works and stuff. But just wanted to give that update. They also, this was in my inbox, they also sent chocolates since it was a virtual meeting. And I missed out on these on Friday, which might have been fun. So I'll share them tonight because it looks like it's a whole box of chocolates.
Very nice, thank you.
Climate-friendly chocolate.
Climate friendly chocolates, yes. I think that was sponsored by our friends at the city of Aspen, I believe.
All right. Thanks, Erica.
Yep.
Ben?
I would just remind everybody that there's an election and the ballots are due on Tuesday. There's 4, I believe, statewide ballot issues. There's school board questions and there's a local school district no levy override that we discussed last week. So just encourage everybody who's watching and everybody you know, remind people to vote. It's an easy one to forget because it doesn't have governor or Senate or president or any of the kind of exciting stuff for people, but it's, in my view, just as important. And Dan, are you going to mention the comp plan meetings this week?
I wasn't going to, so you want to do that?
So again, just reminding everybody that there's presentation about the comprehensive plan and kind of their findings in Spanish Wednesday night. So tomorrow night on Zoom, all the details on the town website, and Thursday night in English. And so that's an opportunity to stay home. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. and hear what the consultants in the Planning and Zoning Commission and all the different focus groups have put together as where we're headed. So I think it's a really important last step in that process before it comes to, I guess, the Planning and Zoning Commission and then us for final adoption.
Thanks, Ben. Luis?
Just wanted to point out that I heard news this week that Wine Time is closing on 133, and obviously very disappointing that another shop locally owned is closing. And well, I'm not sure of all the reasons, but my understanding is one is lack of staff. So again, I think it drives home the point that this council needs to address housing among one of the issues in the coming year. So
Thanks, Luis. Lonnie?
2 quick ones. I attended the Co-Venture Board of Directors meeting on October 18th.
Is your mic on?
Oh, sorry, start over. I attended the Co-Venture Board meeting on October 18th, and the Back to Work initiative is underway with a lot of diligence having been done on the specifics of why certain subsets of businesses are struggling perhaps. And from the employee staff itself came to light that, gee, the consumer base is a little bit aggravated currently, and they, by and large, don't feel that they're being appreciated and why go back to work. So that was kind of an interesting finding that I wasn't expecting anyway. And we'll continue to look at that in the different business sectors as well. Beyond that, on the academic side, they've taken a look at RFL, Startup Colorado, the Aspen Institute, and the Office of Economic Development for their input on these same issues, since it's been recurring in all facets of our communication. So that's ongoing. Mountain Pitch is this Thursday, right before the event that Ben mentioned, the comprehensive plan update. So That's from 12 to 2:30, roughly at 75 minutes. And there are about 6 organizations that are pitching. So if anyone's interested to see what sorts of businesses are interested in starting in our area, that might be something to attend. I also attended, along with Marty, the GCLCC. So it's another very long acronym, which stands for Garfield County Latino Community Committee, which has been in existence for 4 months. They're still in the developmental stage, getting their bylaws together and so forth. But as we were talking about the Equity in Action project, in taking a look at this from our local community, some of whom are seated elected officials, others past elected officials, and certainly members of the police department, it seems like a great resource for us to pursue locally here. That really understands the community, some of the things that are impacting everybody, right? And so I'll be attending the next one in November. It's November 10th in Rifle this time. It jumps around. It's Garfield County specific, and the meetings move around between municipalities. So it was actually here on the 13th. And again, we'll be in Rifle on November 10th. So that's it for me.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, Marty.
Couple of things, one thing which Lee's made me think of with wine times closing. I would have to verify this, but I believe that Main Street Liquors is going to close on Mondays. Pops Liquors has been closed on Sundays. The last 2 or 3 Sundays, hopefully they're reopening. Tina has been closed for lunch Monday through Wednesday. And we all know Pepino's is closed on Mondays now. And all this is due to a lack of staff. And, you know, not that the business isn't there, but there isn't the staff to staff these businesses. And I spoke to the former Carbondale City Market Manager, Marty, happened to be in Glenwood today. And we all know it's everywhere. It's from Aspen down to Glenwood, anywhere from 20 to over 40 openings per store at City Market. So not wise enough to have all the answers, but I know this is a problem that only keeps on getting worse.
Thanks, Marty. And according to the Colorado Workforce Center, it's not going away anytime soon. There's some larger demographic trends that indicate this will last for more than a few years. So, all right. I have a few items. One, just thanks to staff and the community for helping us interview our 3 finalists for the town manager process. We're still at a point where it's a personnel matter. We don't have anything to communicate, but the process is playing out. And I just really appreciate everybody's efforts to participate. The community meet and greet last Wednesday night was really well attended. And I think it just was, it was great. And I know particularly Kevin and Kathy put in a ton of effort for 2 full days of activities to interview candidates. So thank you for all the efforts of making that happen. 2, I just wanted to say thanks. I participated in the last month in the Hearst Community Initiative, meant to promote community dialogue among our region, sponsored by the Aspen Institute. So thank you for the Aspen Institute for letting me participate in that. And that's really, I mean, it sounds pretty simple, but that's what it was intended, that we didn't solve any problems, but really approach leadership from how do we foster the dialogue we need to have. So thanks. You may have read that I had a meeting with Garfield County today about Valley Meals, and I think we're kind of in a world of hurt. Valley Meals ramped up to provide additional meals during COVID, and now their funding is running out. And Garfield County may be able to ramp up their program a little bit, but I think in the coming months and certainly next year, we may see a decrease in the meals provided to our seniors unless something can shift. So I wish I had better news about that meeting, but funding is running out. Had a RAFTA board meeting last week. We discussed the budget. If anybody's interested in RAFTA's budget, it's online. It's quite the robust document, so there's lots to look at there. The last meeting I mentioned the disparity in how the elected official transportations commission is collecting use tax versus sales tax. And the board agreed to, in addition to supporting the no fares from Aspen to Snowmass, we also made changes throughout the valley. So once the winter season kicks in, it's going to be free, which isn't applicable to Carbondale because it's already free. But riding RAFTA within any one zone is free. So you'll be able to ride to say El Jebel to Basalt for no cost. And we've also reduced the cost. It's kind of complicated, but essentially it's anywhere from $1 to $2 less for anyone riding the bus from Glenwood to Aspen. So now if you're a Carbondalian, it's going to be $1 cheaper to ride to Glenwood or $1 cheaper to ride to Aspen. In addition to the new fares for youth, which is now $1 for anybody 19 and younger to ride RAFTA anywhere, which is pretty huge. So we all felt that that was a pretty good compromise. And so my message is gas is going up and RAFTA is getting cheaper. So give it a shot. We also got an update on the bike share project, and we'll have a presentation in November. Kathy, I don't know if RAFTA reached out, but we'll need to leave space on one of our November meetings for an update from RAFTA on that. Just want to remind folks that I don't know about any other departments, but I know our police department is still short-staffed, very short-staffed by 30 or 40%. So I get calls on speeding and other things, but I just ask you to be patient with our police force as they're all working overtime and it's a stress on them right now. So be extra sweet if you would. And thanks. Our school resource officer, Paul Lazo, is here. Thanks for coming, Paul. And then lastly is the Equity Action Project. When we talked about this, whenever it was 2 weeks ago, there was some concern about us funding two shares, if you will. And Brian followed up from the Manaus Fund. Any other thoughts? As far as I know, they haven't found a third. But is it at least, do we want to pursue this? Other thoughts? And if we don't have enough information, that's okay. But I just want to know if that information that Brian provided changed anybody's opinion. And if there aren't thoughts, I'll.
Not particularly. He did list a series or gave us a series of references. And just a couple of them I recognized and jotted them down. I haven't had an opportunity yet to contact them, but that was one thing I was going to do to see what their impression was of the quality of this program.
Okay. Yeah, Marty.
Yeah, and I just want to thank him for providing the information. Last time I kind of felt like we were flying blind, and I'm reluctant to authorize us spending money when we don't have enough information in front of us. So, you know, it helps. It's still a question in my mind if it's worth the outlay of resources. Not that the program isn't worthwhile, but I think it still bears some more thought on our part.
Okay. And just for the viewing public, I think it's my fault. We were flying blind, not Brian or
no, I didn't mean to assign blame.
No, but I just want people to know that it's, I didn't provide enough information to the group, not them. So, Ben.
Yeah, I'm still having a little bit of a hard time with it. I still agree with the goal. I don't know if it's the best process to get us to those outcomes. I still question the value proposition of it being all remote and via Zoom. That part in particular, I feel like there's got to be somebody who can do this kind of work in person. And I appreciated the breakdown as well. I responded to Brian, but it was probably too late for him to give me a response to my follow-up. I still wanted to see a further breakdown. I'm still not sure why it costs $46,000 in facilitation costs for somebody to run Zoom meetings.
Okay.
So I don't want to derail this if the board thinks it's the right thing. I also just have had some thoughts about the timing with our short staff right now, especially in police and with bringing on a new town manager and having already committed to a process like this, I just wonder if a year from now, it might be a better time. But like I said, if there's momentum behind it and there's support behind it, I'm not going to derail it, and I support the goals. And I don't question anybody's intent or anything like that. I just honestly can't get my head around the true cost breakdown. When I look at the list of other groups that have gone through it, I can't imagine that they paid these kinds of costs. I think that there are funding sources maybe that have been tapped for them.
I know that to be the case.
Yeah.
And that's why they said, they're going to ask us, do you want to pay full freight? If not, we'll help you find grants, but they're going to ask.
Yeah.
So, the other thing I'll say with this Hearst Community Initiative, there were a total of 5 sessions. 2 of them were Saturday afternoons and 3 of them were Zooms. And there's no question that the Zooms, it was interesting to have that contrast, and the Zooms they didn't do it. So, point taken on the Zoom function. Yeah, Marty?
And one other thing, when Lonnie spoke about that Garfield County LLC that we went to, I think if more of our elected officials go, that'd be a good outreach just to learn what existing problems there are that maybe we're not hearing about. Because things were brought up there that was I aware of, kind of, but it was in the back of my mind. And it really brought it to the forefront. Such as someone going to DMV and having to take their kid as a translator.
Right.
And why are we still doing that when there are, websites in all these different languages? You go to a doctor's office, they can pick up a phone, get a translator. So, I mean, it was a good, thoughtful thing, and it would be well worth anyone who wants to go to a meeting. And I'm sure they'd be very welcome.
I agree.
Okay. Thanks, Marty. All right. Seeing no other comments, Mark is out of town tonight, so he'll be with us for the executive session, but he's not here tonight to make comments. So
just to be clear, we're not making a decision on the equity
No.
action project right now.
yeah, just tell me still not ready. All right, so we will move on to item number 6 is appointment of planning and zoning commissions or commissioners, excuse me. Let me get that in front of me. Geez. There we go. All right, so as we talked about, we have added this to our agenda when there are more applicants than there are open spaces. And Janet submitted this memo to us. We have 3 applicants, Elizabeth, Cade, and Ann, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends that we appoint Elizabeth and Cade. Are there thoughts? I'm not seeing Janet here, so as far as you know, Kevin, anything to add from staff's perspective?
No, I think just to understand that the motion involves what I understand to be kind of the historic pattern where alternates are moved into permanent seated positions, and then the interviews are to refill those alternate positions.
Right, thank you. So I forgot that part. They're also recommending that Kim and Jarrett be appointed regular members, so Elizabeth and Cade as alternates. Is there anyone here in the audience who'd like to, I know Cade, I don't know others. Is there anyone here who would like to speak?
I'm Ann.
Okay. Hi, Ann.
Hi.
Thanks. You don't have to, but just want to give you the opportunity if you do.
And Elizabeth is on Zoom.
And Elizabeth is on Zoom. So Elizabeth, if you'd like to offer any comments, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll open it up to the board to see if anybody has any questions or if anybody would like to make a motion or thoughts. Heather.
Not a question, but a quick comment, and just to say thank you. It's not often that we have, more volunteers to fill spots than we have to fill. And if you happen to be someone who is not appointed this evening, one, there's lots of other boards to like join and keep kind of getting your feet wet. Two, just keep an eye out and come back to planning and zoning. I think all of our boards, you get a whole different perspective of all kinds of things. So just thank you, existing board members and people that are applying for this particular spots.
Thank you. Well said, Heather. The Planning and Zoning Commission has huge opportunity to influence the future of the town, and it's a lot of work. So we appreciate it. Anyone want to make a motion?
I will. I would recommend that the board appoint Kim McGee, Jarrett Mork as regular voting members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and appoint Kay Giannetti as the first alternate and Elizabeth Kamick as the second alternate.
I'll second that.
Okay. See no other hands. There's a motion by Erica, seconded by Marty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Okay, good luck. And Ann, hang in there. There'll be another spot at some point. Well, it's not a matter of like, it's just.
No, the Bike Pedestrian Trails Commission, which I serve on for our board, has, I think, 2 spots and maybe another one coming open real soon. So if you're interested in that part of the equation, the multimodal mobility, we'd love to see you there.
All right. Moving on to item number 7 is a consideration of the stage fee waiver for Dia de los Muertos. Eric, welcome.
Hello. So Carbondale Arts is putting together another great First Friday event, Dia de los Muertos. They would like to use our town stage, and this would be the first use of the town stage like in the street, in 4th Street itself. And they wanted to do that so they could use the street in front of them for Ballet Folklorico to perform and on the stage, and then also produce a fire show on the street there too. So that's the vision. They didn't get a chance to take this in front of the Parks and Rec Commission for their kind of approval, which is usually the process, but we ran out of time there. So Parks and Rec Commission would probably support this. So I just wanted to let you know that they would probably support this. How the stage works though, the town employees are the only ones trained to put it up and take it down. So when you have an event like this, which is on a Friday evening in the middle of the street, we're going to have some overtime of those employees on the Saturday to take it down and to put it up potentially depending on what they're doing that day for their regular work. So that's the portion of the fee waiver that is not waived. That's the $280 that is for the town overtime staff to put it up and take it down. The nonprofit rate of $250 and the damage deposit of $1,000 is what they're asking for to be waived. So
okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Eric, I have a question or two. So the nonprofit rate is $250?
yes,
And what's the regular rate?
$500 for a for-profit entity that would want to use
Okay.
it for a event.
And do we have a policy or an intent? Stage is still relatively new.
Yeah.
And I know it was used for a nonprofit event out at RVR and the fee was waived. But is Parks and Rec coming up with a policy, like if any nonprofit comes up and wants to use it, are we going to waive the fee in the future?
We have them go through the process, of coming to the Parks and Rec Commission, and then they will recommend whether or not they feel that it's valid to waive the fee to you guys. And then they will have to come in front of you also.
I'm just asking because I thought the intent was that when we got the new stage, that some of those fees would help go to kind of offset the cost.
Oh, sure. Yeah, because it's not a cheap entity to have, as far as a recreational amenity. Luckily, we did spend some money on it. It's built very well. it's gonna last us many, many years.
That's good.
Yeah, which is really nice. It's built very, very well. And if we keep putting it up right and taking it down right, it will last us a long
Okay,
time.
I have no opposition to this particular event, but I'm just, as it's still new, I'd like to, Parks and Rec to come up with, what's our policy? If any nonprofit requests the use of it, will we waive the fee? Or is it for particular things, or is it on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah,
Whatever.
I would say it's a case-by-case basis. Since it is new, we had no idea what the use of it was going to be, or what the request for use was going to be. So this year, we kind of just said, let's try it for a year, only let nonprofits use it. If any for-profit entity came to us, actually say, let's just see what the use is for the nonprofit needs first, and then we'll see if we want to expand to using it for those other entities. We would like to get more people trained on it, because if it's 3 people that know how to do it, boy, the more use, all of a sudden we've got some pretty burned out employees. So
Thank you.
Eric, I would just second that I think just like a variance is a case by case. I think there still could be criteria that we evaluate, and I think it'll save our bacon so that we're not too subjective in the futures. So I think it would be good to have some criteria.
okay, excellent. Yeah, we can create that. So you're thinking of what is this kind of event benefiting? What's is that the type of criteria you're looking for, and what is the community benefit?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it is a case by case, but is there a community benefit? Does it, I don't know. I don't know what else you would use, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think at least it seems like this is the only second waiver that we've done, and both of them have been events where it's not a paid ticket to get in.
Mhm.
And also I would see this event, I mean, the whole community can come to this event. It's not fenced off. It's just a fun, amazing event, actually. And then I think the other one was that concert in the driving range. And I think that was free entry as well. So maybe that's one of the criteria for consideration. Not that we wouldn't, I mean, nonprofits also need to raise money and have events, so we might still consider it, but I could see that being one of the items that we want to know.
I'm less concerned with the specifics as I am just having something to guide it so we can say this is the criteria we use. So,
Yeah, okay.
okay. Any questions of Eric? Would you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the fee waiver for the use of the stage for Dia de los Muertos
And the damage deposit.
and the damage deposit. Thank you.
Motion by Marty, seconded by Ben. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion passes.
I was gonna call that one Baraka. So-
All right. All right. Well, thanks, Eric. Item number 8, Police Department update. Welcome, Chief Wilson.
Good evening.
We have to stop meeting like this.
So,
Before I get underway, I just wanted to say I've enrolled in the Sally Struthers memo writing for board workshops, and I'll be attending that online here briefly. So I apologize about my memo that was quite discombobulated.
thank you, Kurt.
So I have a lot of stuff to cover. I'd like to move rather rapidly and start off with just lessons learned from the academy. I've spoken with Officer Lazo. I've spoken with other officers that attended. After the academy wrapped up, we sat in here, round table, and had a discussion about what was learned, what did they like, what did they not like. And so I wanted to go over and share a few of these things briefly with you. Participants expressed that this was a fun, enjoyable event right off the bat. On day one, before we even got underway, there was a discussion about just what it was called, the Citizens Academy, Citizens Police Academy. we decided right then and there, we're going to remove citizens because that may exclude some people, that may upset people. And that was a non-issue. It was a fantastic thing. The conversation took off really well, and we had no reason to hold on to that. Another thing was registration. Why are we doing registration? Simply because other organizations do registrations. And yeah, that was why we had it. So we got rid of a registration program. We're still trying to figure out how to find out how many people are actually going to attend this in the future. But we listened to that feedback. In a conversation that I had with James Steinler, he enjoyed the open and honest discussions of sometimes very difficult questions that were being posed. And if we didn't have the answers, we came back to the Academy the following week and shared as best we could those answers about what drives a police department, what's, reasons based in law of why officers do the things that they do. Attendees voiced throughout, they want to make sure that the Carbondale Police Department doesn't succumb to the us first them mentality that so many agencies have. And we agreed with that. That's across the board within the department, within the community. We don't ever want to be in that situation. It was a great platform to listen to the community and share varying perspectives. They really enjoyed listening to officers. We introduced more than half the department to them, and they really enjoyed hearing why officers do what they do, why they chose law enforcement, what brought them to Carbondale. And then we also went around the room and they shared their perspectives on why they were here, what brought them to Carbondale, what brought them to the Academy as well. And I think that really broke down barriers on both sides. And it showed some vulnerability as far as the officers go, and it showed some vulnerability from community members. Moving along, participants said they had a desire for officers to hold educational events regarding certain laws so that we could explain things in greater detail. So they didn't quite understand, as discussions in here have been, what's the difference between private property and public property? That seems to be a very big question, not only currently in Carbondale, but across the state, across the country. And so we'd like to do a better job of getting out ahead of those issues, sharing that information. One amazing conversation that took place was about co-responders. I think the group was very happy to hear that we have had the co-responder model with the Aspen Hope Center for quite a while, before it was a thing. And I forget who brought the idea to me outside of class. There's an organization in the Eugene, Oregon area called Cahoots. And I always have to look, it stands for Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Street, on the street. And this makes the police department a clearinghouse for everything from crisis issues, mental health crisis issues, substance abuse issues, people that are in need of shelter, in need of, that are homeless. How do they get medical attention? Where do they go when temperatures drop? Where to get a COVID vaccine, where to get a flu shot, where to get their teeth checked. And as well as they incorporate a lot of community mediation programs. So they train officers on how to mediate conflict, civil violations of law, but they also invite the community to come in and learn about these various things and how to affect that change themselves so they don't need to call 911. That started a conversation with the Manaus Foundation with Sydney Shallot, as well as some other locals. And so we are looking to that model to see how we can bring that to Carbondale. And I'll wrap up this with, there was a desire to see the department actively look for opportunities to hear from marginalized communities, our Latino population, our LGBTQ population, our youth population, our seniors. What are we doing to reach out to them? So that's something that the police department is working on, of how to reach out, not just on social media, but how to get officers into some places. I'll kind of pause there, and if anyone has questions about the lessons learned, fire away, please.
How many people participated in that? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Paul, do you?
Or
offhand,
about,
do
I
you
mean, I'm just,
remember
is it
roughly?
10?
10 to 15 people were routinely there, I would say on average about 12.
Okay. And do you feel like it sounds like it was a two-way street. It sounds like it was the department learning about issues and maybe making some adjustments going forward. And it was for those 10 people learning and hopefully spreading the word. My main thought is how can we share those kinds of lessons and learnings that those 10 or 15 people have more broadly? And I don't expect an answer to that. That's just kind of where my head goes.
I think if you have the answer for that, you could make a lot of money writing a book on that. James Steinler from the Sober Sun attended. He wrote a fantastic article promoting it and explaining how much fun it was, and the decision-making process of the final day, because we put people into scenarios that most would think are very black and white and very easy. And it wasn't as easy as they thought it was. And it really changed some minds changed some perspectives, I would say. And so we're looking at how to turn that into just one-day events where we can reach out to Sober's Lodge, who's come over and asked for us to talk about some safety topics. How do we get into Bridges High School? How do we go talk to the high school, different locations? And so that really sparked some fantastic conversation.
Is it possible there's clearly things that are unique to Carbondale, but is it possible to team up with other departments to do kind of policing 101 for half a day or something once a year, and then individual departments could do other things to supplement that?
Absolutely. We've done that in the past with Basalt Police Department. So we've really teamed up with them in the past. And definitely, you discussed it earlier with staffing numbers. We're going to be battling this for quite a while. And I think that's going to have to be incorporated in the strategic plan over the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one.
Erica and then Bowden.
Since you brought up the, is it Kahoot? Is that what it's
Cahoots,
called?
yes.
Cahoots? Cool. When I was at the Colorado Municipal League, I listened in on a presentation from the Fort Collins Chief of Police on their co-response program.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've had a chance to hear from them or if you interact with them at all.
I've not heard back from them, but
Okay.
I have reached out to get some of their policies and how they were able to move forward with it.
Yeah, because it's really, and it's not, it's like building on what you guys have in place. what
Yes.
We have in place. And what was really stood out to me was the idea that some code enforcement complaints end up also being a bigger issue that might need to be addressed. And so one of their officers, she was really compelling and just talked through how, I think she oversees some of the code staff, how they'll get a call on like the weeds or hoarding or something like that. And she calls the mental health folks and says, can you come with me on this one? And just realizing that like, this might be a bigger problem that we can help address.
Absolutely.
Instead of it just being relying on the code officer to write a ticket and walk
move on.
away. And then also they track who's making the calls in case, just so the police know that like this resident is always making these same complaints. Maybe we should go check in with them and just have a check-in on like, how's everything going? Because you're complaining about them and them and them and
Yes.
them. So it was really eye-opening. And what I've been meaning to summarize my notes in an email to you, and I apologize for not doing that, but they do have the presentation online and you could at least kind of see it, but it sounds like you're
Fort Collins is a model department
Yeah.
across the board. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get up there and just steal a few moments
Right.
with their chief.
No, it's cool. I also got to meet the deputy. When I crashed the North Glen party and I got the budget, I also met the deputy chief there. And they are just now implementing a co-response program, but he was getting really annoying questions from residents and he dealt with them really well. And it was the kind of thing where it was like between hanging out with the Fort Collins folks earlier that day and then this North Glen guy who had come from Chicago, also wanted to make sure that you might have access to these people as well as mentors and just what are you dealing with? And if there's that kind of network, I wasn't sure, but I at least met two that I was like, oh, I think you would really enjoy getting to know them and learning from them.
Without a doubt. So local chief, Basalt Chief Greg Knott is the president of the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police and knows everyone and is an amazing guy. And he started out here. So getting over to see him, of course, all of our agencies are pretty slim right now.
Yeah.
But that's definitely on the mentorship side of things.
Wish list.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Bowden?
And I was just thinking about how you said, like, getting into schools, if you could go to school during lunch, you do like just a short little class or like after schools, or even go to Stepping Stones and see if you can do a class there. Cause I go there a lot and I think they'd probably love to have you guys there. So
Absolutely. And the gentleman back to your right,
Yes.
School Resource Officer Paul Lazo,
Yeah.
if I could clone him right now, I absolutely would. So he is responsible for 6 schools. I don't know of another school resource officer in the region that is asked to cover so much. Yes, and so that's part of the plan. Now that homecoming week is behind us, and Paul's life is getting back to normal. Fingers crossed that we're able to get out and be seen a little bit more. Thank you.
Heather, did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just one quick one on when they finish the academy, is there like an ask? I mean, what do they go out and take out into the community? Is it just, hey, you should participate, it was great? Or, I mean, is there any more that we kind of ask them to do as newly trained citizens?
So originally the goal was that we were going to be able to put together the Spanish Academy immediately following. We lost actually 2 bilingual officers almost immediately, and officers started getting stretched thinner and thinner. The plan, and we'll discuss this in very brief detail as well, the plan is to establish a Chiefs Advisory Committee, a Chiefs Advisory Board. And the hope is to be able to fill that with people that have attended the academy so that they have a better understanding of both sides of issues. And then when we do have a lot of these 29 pillars that are some of the 29 pillars that are not fulfilled, those will be the go-tos of go out into the community. I'd like to hear your perspective on what you think about less lethal technologies. We're looking into this new policy regarding force or whatever the case may be, and having them as just another committee that's able to provide greater information and public support, or the other direction.
Just a very quick comment. When you spoke about cahoots, I believe if you look, 60 Minutes did a nice
Did a
segment
wonderful
on
job on
that.
it. Yeah. It's been modeled in Springfield. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department in North Carolina is doing that. And you're starting to see that model expand across the country because police agencies shouldn't be the catch-all.
They should be staffed
They
appropriately.
should be absolutely
have
staffed
those-
with trained people to do that,
And have those resources available, like,
Yes.
oh, okay, here's who can help you find where to get that shot.
without a doubt, for sure. Okay, moving on to the recommendations of President Obama's 21st Century Task Force on Policing. So I'm gonna move rather quickly. We have fulfilled and are doing 20 of the 29. So I want to touch on the things that we're not quite there with. And a few of them are going to make sense on just why we're not doing that. One is under building trust and legitimacy, agencies should track the community's level of trust through annual community surveys. We have a robust policy on this, both social media and how to do surveys. We just don't know, we don't have an actual survey that we can send out. I do have some information on where we can get one that's approved through the Department of Justice. It's going to take a little bit of work, but I think we can do that either by mail when people come in contact with us, because we are now required to collect their information, or we could do that on social media. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a survey person. And so an ask of mine would be to kind of think about that, what your thoughts of judging the community's thoughts and trust of the department would look like.
Chief, let's consider these at the high level, and then
Yes.
that'll give the board a chance to weigh in on them rather than. Awesome.
The next would be policy and oversight. The second bullet, police organizations should have clear and consistent department policies guiding the use of force, and those policies need to be made public. We have the appropriate policies. They are considered best practice by the Department of Justice. They're not published currently. We are working on getting that on our website, and I see that happening first quarter of 2022. Under the same category, a few more down, police departments should also implement non-punitive peer review in situations involving critical incidents, sometimes referred to as near misses or sentinel events. The police department holds department debriefs after situations, but it doesn't quite meet the overall requirements or recommendations of President Obama, what President Obama has laid out. We're working on that. I expect that to be more formalized and in place, probably more towards the end of the year, based on staffing issues and getting things hammered out. We can move to technology and social media. The first two are recommendations for the federal government. Develop national standards and guidance on best practices, constitutionality, and privacy concerns surrounding police technologies. And the next is pretty much the same thing when talking about technology in the sense of body-worn camera systems, taser devices, less lethal options. There are several other less lethal options that are out there. Other organizations in our area are using them. We're using them as guinea pigs to see how they deploy these devices. The Bola Wrap is certainly one of these. If you haven't seen it, it's an electronic device that I won't describe it very well. It sends out essentially a rope with some weights on the end, and it wraps around someone's legs or wraps around someone's arms. It's much lower on the scale than tasing someone. So it just incapacitates. They're not able to move their arms or their legs. They've had several good deployments. One gentleman threatening his neighborhood with a sword that was deployed appropriately and perfectly. And so that caught our eye for sure. Police should engage the public when developing policies and new technologies. As discussed before, I think once we're able to get a Spanish academy under our belts and are able to pull some resources, pull together some individuals that would like to serve on a committee, we'll have that in place and meet that recommendation. Yikes. Moving to training and education. Include more community input and engagement into police training. Same thing. Once we're able to get a chief's advisory committee or board together, we will have that insight from the community much more readily available than what we're currently doing, because we are flying blind, I guess you could say in that regard. And then the final section would be officer wellness and safety. The first bullet, law enforcement agencies should promote wellness and safety at all levels of the organization. We are doing that. What we're not doing is, as well as regularly collect and analyze data on officer deaths, injuries, and near misses. We really don't have, we've not done that in the past. I don't think that's a difficult ask. I don't think it's a difficult thing for us to do. But we're trying to figure out what that actually looks like. And then the following shift lengths should be scientifically supported to reduce fatigue and stress that can negatively impact performance. Once we're fully staffed, I feel very comfortable in discussing that right now. We're looking very forward to the next 3 that are coming on board within the next month. That's all I have. Those are the recommendations that we are not meeting based on that task force. Any questions there?
Oh, I just had one thought on that last one.
Yes.
On collecting and analyzing data, kind of tracking, it sounds like the mental health and wellness of your officers. I guess that sounds important. It sounds like thinking of something from scratch on how to do that. I don't know if other agencies have a way, or if with our HR, there's a way to make it simple, but I would just say, knowing you guys are short-staffed, that's one that it's great that you're trying to think of it, but there must be a simple existing way out there.
We are not, we're not going to consider reinventing the wheel on this one.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a call to CACP. It's fantastic that Greg is right next door. And I think that a few of these items will be done first quarter, just based on calling and saying, what's your policy look like? Can you send it over to me? I think we'll be there rather quickly.
Great.
I mean, you didn't touch on the 5 bullet points in community policing and crime reduction. And I guess all of these seem really interesting because in concept, they are phenomenal policies, but this sort of, like, how do you know you're getting there, right? What's the baseline, and then what's the data that you're collecting to say, ensure all members of society, particularly those who are vulnerable, are treated with dignity and respect? Because there's 2 pieces to that. One, there's the police's direct role in how they treat that population. But I think what's becoming more challenging coming out of COVID and some of those things is how we treat each other, and then how the police have to like insert themselves into that in healthy ways or whatever, right? And so a lot of what we're hearing are people are not being treated that way, not necessarily by the police. And so, but there's still a role in that for the police when it escalates, blah, blah, blah. So this one is a really hard one for me to pass over and say, oh, we're doing it, because we could say that, I could say that, you could say that, but if our vulnerable population doesn't say that. So I'll just double back. That first one about surveys, I think would be huge. It's your only way to establish a baseline, find those vulnerable populations, go to them directly, and genuinely start measuring, especially I think this one, all 5 of those bullet points. So I think that would be a great one to really start figuring out how to have consistent surveys and, actually be measuring if we're achieving some of these things.
I think the survey and advisory committee will do wonders for the department. I think also, I know his head's going to explode as it grows, but so Officer Lazo is going to our field training officer school coming up here. Another officer, 2 other officers that are fantastic representatives of the department are also going to field training. And to change the culture, to ensure that people are included, that all members of our community feel included and safe, it starts with them. It starts with the second we bring somebody into the organization with the indoctrination of Carbondale is different than other organizations. We don't expect you, we don't want you to go kicking in doors, dragging people out by the hair. I mean, that day is over and done 50 years ago. Instead, we want patience. We want officers that communicate with people. We want officers that understand other people. We're working with Janet Gordon. If you're not familiar with her, she's a local counselor, and she's really taken up the torch of the LGBTQ plus community. She'll be coming back in the spring and just talking to our officers about how to communicate with people from these groups, from these communities appropriately. What does someone find offensive from that group, and how do we mitigate, how do we reduce the risk of, or the odds of an officer making a simple error by just insulting someone unknowingly or unwittingly if they're not familiar with that group. So we're looking for ways, but you're absolutely right. It's more of a gut feel currently on where we feel we stand with that.
Thanks.
I want to add on to that. To me, where I thought we could go, I really like having the 29 pillars as a reference.
Yes.
For purposes of what you just talked about. What are our strengths and weaknesses as it relates to them? I'm sure there's no department in the country that's doing them all well. But to your point, Heather, I could see two things going forward. I could see you coming back to us and saying in the next half year, maybe year, but I like to think in shorter terms, here's what we're going to focus on improving. But then also what RAFTA does, RAFTA follows policy governance, and we ask staff to report on how are you complying with these different policies. And sometimes it's simple, but we as a board could choose a handful. I wouldn't want you to report on all 29, and they could evolve over time, but we could say, we would like you to report on a regular basis on what you're doing in order to demonstrate that you're complying with this. Heather, would that get at what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, especially if it had a certain data component with it, right? So like if we said all these things, this particular one in oversight, and then these in, the community policing part rise to the top for us. Circling back, we're going to start surveying, and that may even influence the survey in some respects. If we're like, hey, there are 6 of these that really need to be measured out in the community, not by the people sitting in this room, right? That immediately informs your survey as to what you should actually be going out and asking. So I like that. And I think that that's definitely the case. You're not like surveying the community on, I don't know, the use of body cameras.
Sure.
Maybe you are, but whatever.
Well, and
some not.
RAFTA takes it a step further. And when we first adopted the policies 20 plus years ago, we asked Dan, our CEO, to come back and say, tell us how you interpret this. And we could add to that how you're going to measure this. And then when we ask you to report on that, exactly we're on the same page of what it means to report that. So I think, to me, I see the next step in the community policing discussion is you come back to us to say, which ones are you going to work on? It probably doesn't make sense to work on all the 9. That's even too much. Right. So which ones do you want to prioritize? And then for us to come back and say, these are the ones that are really important to us, and we would like to track progress, or just work. It may not be progress. Maybe we're doing things perfect. But we just want to know about these particular policies. I'm seeing some head nods. Marty, Luis has his hand up first, and then you.
I mean, when Heather was bringing this up, I think one of the first things that I noticed is the first point is procedural justice as a guiding principle. And to me, that makes so much sense, because then you're treating everybody with that fairness and respect that people expect with those interactions. But one of the things that you brought up, I think, was, or at least it's mentioned here, is this idea of an advisory board. And I know that's not something we currently have, and I'm not trying to create something else for, obviously, lean staff to handle, but I wonder if that is, say, an area that can also help with something like a survey or something that can really be an extension of saying, you know, that. So it was just a thought. But
I know that Fort Collins, that is one of the things that the advisory board does, is they help out with creating the work sets of, hey, this is what we need to measure. How are we going to measure that? They create a survey or a program that addresses those things in conjunction with their chief and deputy chiefs. And that's really, fingers crossed, I think we can make that happen.
And if that board is made up of people that, you know, represent different members of, you know, communities that maybe aren't as well represented.
Yes,
on the board, that would be great.
that is the goal, and that's why I have not moved forward with that, because we did not do the Spanish Academy. And what I left the last academy with was some of them are going to receive an email from me asking who wants to participate in this. So they're well aware of it, but they also know we need that Spanish Academy, because I'd like to have 50-50 representation if we can make that happen.
But this is great work. Thank you, Kurt.
We have about 5 minutes left. Marty.
Yeah, no, I second that. The advisory board is definitely understanding the staffing limitations. But when you were speaking about surveys, Heather, I was thinking just a survey, like a Survey Monkey survey to the whole community in English and Spanish. Okay. How do you feel? I can't give you the questions exactly, but what's your opinion of the Carbondale Police Department? Do you feel that it's focused on you as an individual? Do you feel that you are not heard by the police when you bring a complaint? I can't get all the questions, but I'm just starting with the Survey Monkey. How does the community feel about the police department? And then that would give you more room to go at, okay, obviously, these are issues for people. 25% of the respondents said they're not comfortable interacting with the police officer. Okay. Why? Is it language? Is it intimidation? Is it a fear of immigration status? Is it feeling that they're not a member of the community? I don't know. I'm just throwing these things out. But I think we need that type of information before we go further.
Erica.
Well, I think an advisory board could actually help craft a lot of that and help vet it. And I do feel like that sometimes people base their current opinion on an interaction that they had 10 years ago, or maybe the interaction that I had with the police when I was in high school, which are not on your staff. And so,
yes.
And so I would want us to have not a caveat. I want people to be able to say what they want to say, but also be able to make sure that we're getting information that's relevant to our current police force. And I do feel like that is exactly what an advisory board could help think through and vet. And again, in North Glen, there were 2 members of their recently formed police advisory commission. I can't remember, they had some good name for it. And those 2 women came, they were the first ones who got up and gave this whole presentation on what the North Glen Police and what this new co-response program was going to be. And it was really cool to see 2 volunteer citizens get up and talk about it instead of it just being a presentation from the police. And my friend who's on the town council said that it was really controversial creating the commission, and it was very competitive for who was going to get on it, just as a heads up. But and I'm happy to get more information also from them on just how what they called it, how they formed that commission, how they made sure it was a diverse group on their commission.
Their policies on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah, I'll find out.
It sounds like there could be support for that. What I would suggest is, before we jump to that step, let's make sure we sort of have the big picture of all the things we want to work on.
Mhm.
So my thought was maybe I don't know if a couple months is too long. But again, Kirk, you would come back to us with a memo saying, here's what we're going to prioritize. And I'd like, and during that meeting, you would be asking us what we want to prioritize in terms of, well, I mean, we could talk about whatever we want, but what we want, we could agree or disagree with what you're going to prioritize, but we could also say, these are the things we want you to report on a regular basis. As part of that, like one of the ones you mentioned, the police department should also implement non-punitive peer review. I mean, to me, that's one where you could develop an advisory committee and it would be accomplishing that goal. Do folks feel like, and as well as the speed plan, because I don't feel like, we're still looking for that approach. Does folks feel like that's a reasonable next step? Bowden's in agreement?
Aye.
Okay. Ben, you've been quiet.
No, I mean, I would just say I really appreciate all this work, Kirk. I don't know if there's anybody else in the country who is in a small town, new to the role, short-staffed, and has come in and said, I'm taking all 29 pillars and I'm going to go through these things and we're going to do them all. I mean, I think it's actually really admirable, your approach to this and your openness to all of our feedback and our community concerns. I don't know exactly what the next step forward is. My one kind of thought as we've been discussing this is just, after the incident last Christmas Eve, there was so much community interest in being part of making sure that our police department was one of the model police departments that de-escalates, that's anti-bias, all those things. And I hear loud and clear that that's what we want to be. There's no disagreement there.
No question.
And so my wondering that I don't have an answer for is how do we engage that community going forward? And I'm hearing this about the academies are good and the advisory board is a great idea. But even at, things like this, like I feel like there still needs to be some sort of bigger community event at some point where people are really able to come in and hear, like, here's the progress we've made, here's where we're headed, and here's how you can be involved, even if you're not on this formal advisory board. So that's just kind of where my head is. But I think, Dan, that your thoughts on Kirk coming back to us with some priorities, us responding to those, and then moving forward on those makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. Bowden, you get the final word.
Yes, just what Ben was saying, I think if you could do this at First Friday, like what he was saying at First Friday, since we already have police there, I think that'd be a great opportunity if you can have officers there. So
I would love to be able to have officers at First Fridays. We're certainly struggling, but yes, I mean, the whole purpose is to get officers out there so that people feel comfortable, walk up and just start asking questions, have a conversation.
All right. I forgot to say at the beginning of the meeting that in order to squeeze in the executive session that wasn't planned, I'm trying to keep this rolling. So thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Chief. And I look forward to the next one. And thank you. Maybe just work with Kathy and Kevin about when it works to do that. This doesn't have to be urgent, but we want to keep the momentum going. So absolutely, maybe December or something. Not a
Well,
problem.
what are we supposed to do with the 50 pages of raw?
I
Is that
apologize.
gonna go into the speed plan that
Apologize.
Dan
So
was just mentioning?
there's not enough time for me to explain that. If you want to,
Maybe I'll connect with you
Please.
separately.
yes,
Is it fair to say it'll be summarized at a future date?
it will absolutely be summarized at a future date. It's new software and we're rapidly trying to learn that for sure.
Okay, well, that's what I was curious, and I could also connect with you. Unless you have an Excel whiz, there would be some ways to create pivot tables where you could just put this raw data in and it would spit out those summaries.
We have the software and both Gretchen and Anna are on the phone with them
Cool.
several hours a day trying to figure out how to make it work. So,
All right, I'll connect with you.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Lazo, for being here. Let's squeeze in one more before break. Item number 9 is approve agreement with the municipal advisor. Kevin?
Sure.
So I believe we briefly touched on this a few meetings ago, but what we're proposing here is to hire a financial or municipal advisor to help us navigate the upcoming data necessary for the election question in April related to the new pool. We initially were going with an underwriter, which kind of limited our ability to rely on their, they act in the best interest of the people that invest with them, not necessarily with the town, and that's okay, that's understandable, but a municipal advisor has that obligation to look out for what's the best interest of the town. So we sent out an RFP for that. Got 3 responses. We interviewed all 3 of them. And what we're recommending is that the board approve going with Hilltop Securities on that. They all had really good proposals. Hilltop was committed to getting it done in the time that we needed it. And really, it wasn't good versus bad. It was picking between good. The way their proposal is set up, it'll be $10,000 to get to the ballot question, because there's a lot of financial analysis that takes place and options, things of that nature. That's going to be a fixed cost for the town regardless of the outcome of the election. If the election passes, then that fee for, getting with the underwriters, getting with the legal counsel, putting the whole package together and actually getting the bonds sold would be $35,000, but that includes the 10. So it would be an additional 25, if that makes sense. My research and my history in other places suggests that the town will more than break even on this by going this route. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, our recommendation is to approve the engagement letter with Hilltop Securities.
Actually, technically, it's to authorize me to sign it, but.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm glad to hear that you got 3 quotes. That gives me confidence that this is a reasonable rate. Otherwise, I have no benchmark for that. I feel like there's going to be a discussion on this board at some point, like where we really decide, are we putting this on the ballot, right? Like it's sort of moving forward that with the assumption that we are, but then we're going to have to really decide. And I think a key part of that, for me at least, and probably for a lot of the board, is going to be how much we're going to be committing out of our budget other than the revenue that's generated already to, pay off the rec center and that sort of thing. Is that part of this, that we're going to get a really clear financial picture, not just of the technicalities of the bonding, but of, in order to do this, you need this much money. Your rec tax pays for this much. This will be freed up from the rec center when it's paid off. And here's what we're going to have to sort of commit to out of maybe the general fund above and beyond that. Like, is this, that's part of the service
That's exactly
okay.
the main purpose of this.
Because I just don't want anybody to assume that we're definitely going forward. Like, until I see that list and how much we're committing ourselves and multiple future boards to, if it comes up and says, we got to find another $1 million a year to put into this, that's not doable. But I think we probably assume that there's going to be some number there. And I just want to be really clear that until we see that number and we really have a commitment to that, allocating that, we're not moving forward with an election until we know that.
That would all be kind of information that would be presented at the time that you say, yes, put this on the ballot, which would be right at the end of the year.
Right at the end of the calendar year.
Yes.
Okay.
Marty?
So that's what the $10,000 we're paying them is to do. And do we have a time frame for when they're gonna get back to us with, the financing information? If we are to put it on the ballot?
This is a very compressed time frame. That information would come at the same time we would bring ballot language to you to either approve or not. Approve.
So before the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have until January to approve ballot language for
First meeting.
first meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's why I said the end of the year.
okay, okay. Heather?
So what is, I guess if we said, whoa, either too fast or we're not ready, too much, whatever, if we, don't put it on the April, they just get their 10,000. Like, what's the backup out of this if we actually say ixnay to putting it on the ballot in April?
I think you're still gonna owe that $10,000 because at that point, they're gonna have gone through the work to analyze the finances, to look at the existing debt, to look at the different financing options. But that being said, for a certain amount of time, that's still gonna be reasonable data to rely on. If you said, nope, we're not doing this in April, we're gonna do it in November. If that's possible.
So.
Okay, that's all I want to know. It's the 10,000, no matter what, you're putting that, then they kind of have this incentive to make this something successful on the ballot because then they participate in the rest and they kind of get the rest of the fees because they do the rest of the work.
Yes and no. I mean, the town is not going to be able to take a position, nor are these folks as far as vote yes, vote no. They're going to be providing factual data that would support a campaign, but not run the campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a separate question, but so a Friends of the Pool still needs to be created.
Yep.
Somewhere.
Definitely.
I mean, I love the way it's set up as like an incentive though for them to make it be successful.
Motion?
Yeah, sure. I move to approve and authorize Mr. Mayor to execute the attached engagement letter with Hilltop Securities.
Second.
And I just emphasize that it's me signing in case there's some tweakage. That's why I emphasize it. Motion by Heather, seconded by Marty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passes. I lied. Let's squeeze in one more because I think this chapter 2 is going to be pretty easy.
Eric's not here.
Where's Eric?
Well, let's
do a
take
break.
a 7-minute break and come back.
You and your 7-minute breaks.
Are they ever really 7 minutes?
What facilitation meeting did you go to?
That's what the data shows we all need.
Is that right?
I thought it was only 5 per function.
No, I've been observing.
7 per function.
I'm saying
Oh,
7
I
minutes.
see. You're
is
just
what-
keeping the data in your head. I got it. Makes sense.
I've never taken a break. They are now. Yes.
Mailbox. Like I've never had.
I hope postal service has done better than that.
Thank you.
Salted toffee.
Oh, see,
Ooh.
that's what I brought for everybody for executive session too. That is really funny. I just got this to me. No, never. And they were both at shop.
Thank you. I should turn my mic.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit out there because I realize that no, thank you. During the executive session, it's gonna be playing in my office unless you.
No, thank you.
So I'm
That
just
was
gonna-
rude, wasn't it? Go away.
Leave me alone. So I'm just gonna sit out there with my earbuds in on the couch and take a nap because it will be playing in my office.
Mute button on your computer if you wanted to. You can lay on the
I'm gonna
couch
lay
too
on
if
the
you want to. whatever is better for you.
I can hit the mute button, but I.
I know you like to see like breakdowns of bids and whatnot. It was impossible to do in this because the way some of them did it by task. So it was so much per task. Some of them did it, well, obviously they did like, okay, here's
No, I
this
just
and then
want
this.
somebody to analyze that. I trust that you guys analyzed it and that was the best deal. So.
Yeah, no question. I'm not gonna say it was the cheapest one. It wasn't the most expensive. It was one, but there was a little more upfront cost in the cheaper one and less.
Do you mind me asking, are you just here observing?
Yeah, that was my only question on that, but I didn't ask. You said that this one pays for itself eventually.
All right.
When we were just gonna initially go with the underwriter, you're basically doing sole sourcing to them to sell it. So you sell it, however much you can do, and they can't really stick it to you, but their obligation is to get the best rate of return, which means it's not necessarily the best rate of return that.
Marty, is the
in process.
post office understaffed right now? I mean, more so than it.
You ever notice that you don't get mail some days?
You get mail every day.
And the savings on those interest rates.
You're lucky because if you carrier is cost.
Ah.
I wonder why anybody would ever go the other route.
People are not getting it.
It's
Wow.
simpler.
Okay.
It's gonna get
You know,
worse.
if we were talking, I mean, this sounds stupid.
And Postmaster General is under investigation.
Geez.
Oh,
Oh, the federal one, yeah.
Yeah,
I
he
heard
is.
about that.
As stocking companies that have contracts with postal service. So that's a conflict of interest.
Yep.
Kathy, is there any way for us to, with Zoom, I guess you can't use two cameras, huh? Because I always wonder about people watching, that you're watching the back of somebody's head over here, but we have that camera and that.
Yeah, we only have the one that takes the whole room in.
Yeah.
I mean, when they set it up, they're pretty good and that's what they came up with.
Because when we used to do it with both, right? And we were like live streaming.
No, where's the chocolate? Over there.
Without Zoom.
That's when they have individual cameras.
The Zoom is, yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ben.
Oh, wow.
Another one.
What's that one?
I mean, I can eat and drink as much sugar as I want.
How strategic, Eric, that you.
What?
Yeah.
Just enough.
Yeah.
Most I've ever been to these meetings. Machinery to do that.
All right, well. Yeah, no, probably not. I-45, probably not.
Texting about the Braves game or something.
Well, probably all the steak I want.
That's okay, thanks. Who are they playing? I'm not into baseball too.
Eric and Hollis, thanks for joining us. We'll bring the meeting back to order.
Hi, everybody again.
We are moving on to item number 10, which is ordinance number 10, series of 2021, amending chapter 2, article 7. Eric?
Yes, so back in May of this year, Hollis has been doing a great job of with her past experiences as our chairperson of the Parks and Rec Commission of, getting us more efficient and bringing us into compliance. And so this is some language that we're requesting be changed in the municipal code to just really, it's really going to make us more efficient as a commission. It's going to match really what's happening on the ground, and just provide some other opportunities for us to just be efficient and be in compliance. So there's 4 requested changes of the language of the code. One would be just increasing the number of members that comprise the commission from the current number of 8 to 9. And we did that with the increase to 9 because we would want it to be comprised of 7 voting members and 2 alternates. And one of the alternate seats would be available for a youth representative. And what was happening with that before, we weren't very consistent with the youth representative. And so, and in the language that existed before, that youth representative was counted as one of the 7. And so we were just not able to make that a consistent position as a voting member. Do you have anything to add to that? Or?
No, I mean, there was a lack of clarity too of whether they were actually a voting member or an alternate member. Their length of time was 2 years instead of 1 year. So it's just like, what makes sense when you're dealing with basically a student. Which of course we want to encourage that, which I see you are. So it's fabulous. Yeah, so it's more.
Yeah, so with the change of the length of the youth representative term to 1 year, that doesn't, if they're interested in serving more time, the language in there is 18, below 18. So they would have to, they turned 18 and they're a senior.
Not serving more time, getting another term.
Right, getting another term, yeah, thanks.
Sounds like they're in prison,
Right.
Eric.
They might feel like it there sometimes, some of those meetings. So what we saw is that this could really align with a capstone project for some of the students, and we wanted to start promoting it as such with the schools, and so that's starting in September of that senior year. It could be a really good capstone project for them, and so that was one reason we looked at that. And then the last item on there is eliminate the secretary position. We haven't used that position in many years, and just to clean up the language in the code.
Okay, because K functions in that capacity.
Yeah, we've been fortunate for ever since, well, most of the time I've been on the commission, there's been somebody who's been assigned to do that. And then we figured that if that wasn't the case, staff has been taking over if Kay or whomever wasn't available. And then also there's just kind of like this blanket statement that, however our internal operations can, I forget what the exact language is, but, basically, however we choose to operate internally.
Okay.
So we thought, well, that would cover that. Who's going to take minutes as well.
Bowden, did you have a question?
I was just get like a recommendation, just let the our teachers know at the high school and even the shop teacher, that would probably, and for capstones, juniors start doing those at the end of the year, each year. So they should probably know about that before.
Nice. Some juniors.
Some juniors, but I don't know about your son, but.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No, that's a great point, Bowden. And that's one of the reasons why we were really looking at that position is how can we reach out more into the schools and let them know that this is available. And we've been fortunate that we had Celeste Fullerton join us mid-year last year.
Mm-hmm.
And Misha Logan is applied and was appointed this year. So we're kind of excited that,
Awesome.
That these things are growing. So definitely reaching out. And now we have Leslie Curie on the commission, who's a high school art teacher. So just starting to build that relationship and then reaching out to CRMS as well and, letting people know that this is available. So building.
Any other questions of Eric or Hollis? Marty?
Hey, Eric, are we gonna be putting in for any federal mineral lease grants for next year?
We,
Or are there nothing about?
yeah, we haven't been looking at those. They've been funding less, park improvement projects and more just kind of more public works type of projects. So, yeah, so it hasn't, we were unsuccessful in the last bid there. So, yeah, we're going to put our efforts elsewhere, I think.
Go ahead.
Are we ready for that?
Yep.
I move to approve ordinance number 10 series of 2021, section 2, article 7 of the town's municipal code modifying the Parks and Recreation Commission membership number, the appointment terms of the youth commissioner, and the elimination of the secretary position.
Hold on, one question, just clarification. It says ordinance number 8 on the document, but ordinance number 10.
It should be ordinance 10, I believe.
Okay, Giannis.
Ooh, thank you.
Okay, so we'll keep the order, the motion as.
Second.
All right. Any further questions? Motion by Ben, seconded by Luis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passes. Right on. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're legal.
Yeah.
Comply.
Yeah.
What's that?
Thank you for that level of attention to detail. I mean,
That stuff matters and it should be accurately reflected and followed, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for your flexibility and, looking at how we can operate better. We've been fortunate that we're gaining more interest in people participating on this commission, and seem to be taking on more and more bigger stuff, so we're maturing.
You guys have a good night. Moving on to our item number 11, budget review and capital projects. Kevin.
We're not going to talk about tires tonight. I know that disappoints Marty. And I'm going to assume that everybody's had a chance to look through this. So the only thing that I was going to point out from the public works perspective is that I put it in there 5 years out, and that's flexible at this point. But we did add a $30,000 cost in there to look at kind of a building condition assessment. And it's not necessarily for the buildings that we occupy with town staff necessarily. It's more some of the buildings that we don't go into that frequently to actually look at the assessment of their condition. For example, the launch pad, 3rd Street Center, those sorts of things, just to get a handle on where are we and what do we need to start planning on expense wise to take care of some of these town owned but not town occupied buildings.
That's a great idea.
Boy, if I had only heard it somewhere.
Budget, so we're not, that's just when budget allows. I worry about our buildings. So Marty?
Yeah, Kevin, I just have a question. The 8th Street modal improvements, do you have that as for 500,000 2022, 500,000 2023? So our total cost is $1 million being budgeted on that?
I do believe, based on what I've seen, that the northern portion is going to be all, if not more, of the $500,000 for next year. And we still have some of the improvements south of the Rio Grande Trail to do. So I threw that in there as a placeholder. Any way we're putting this together can be phased to meet the board's desired budget and timeline.
You're just being cautionary in having the money available if needed?
I'm fairly confident after looking through those plans that the northern portion is gonna cost more than $500,000. That I mean, we're looking at concrete and it sounds silly, but lumber costs affect concrete costs. I have no crystal ball to predict the future. I'm trying to be conservative.
Right, and considering what inflation is,
Yep.
numbers aren't gonna go down, they'll only go up. Thank you.
That was my tag on for everybody in the room, all of these costs. And having that plan, like, what can we bring on in-house? You know, what can we, so part of it. Sorry, part of it is the number of people even just bidding on projects and how low they are. 1, 2, you know, for huge projects, park projects, infrastructure projects. And then that the cost can be double. I don't know if you guys saw the article on the transit center in Snowmass. Twice. And that estimate was only put together about 18 months ago. So just this whole like in general thing of what the backup plan for anything from, you know, the milling and capping to something like 8th Street. And being prepared as a group, it's that nothing was wrong with any of the original estimates. Nothing's wrong with the bid sets, like that this is just kind of what's happening and like being prepared for whatever backup plans. Either projects go quiet for another year or, hey, we can do stuff in-house or massive value engineering or you find more money, but like being prepared for twice even on a whole bunch of these of what we see in here. So that was one. My second one was, because there's no response necessary to that. Water, wastewater, are we done with some of those big items or were they just not in this particular list of CIP because it's a different fund? Okay, great, no problem. Yep, that's cool. That's all I needed to know.
Ben?
I had 2 items to talk about a little bit. One is the surface parking improvements, downtown service parking, which is for the lot. I always have to orient myself when I'm indoors that way. That we purchased across the street, 2 years ago or so. So I don't feel like we've gone through a process of saying, we definitely want to pave that and get that going, but it sounds like we're moving in that direction. Because other ideas have been thrown out there. Is that where we want to put housing and parking or whatever? So can you just talk me through that, the 275,000 for 2022 and then another 250,000 for 2023 kind of looks like we're making a parking lot and then we're not going to want to rip that up and do something else with it.
Part of the reason it's in there is to have that discussion.
Okay.
You know, from my perspective, this was not asking for a blank check for next year and that gives automatic approval. Is this a priority for the board or should it be moved? I mean, I think we should have money in there at some point in this.
Yeah.
To do something over there. But if the board wants to mull over, is there a higher and better use than, I mean, once you start pouring curb and putting conduit in the ground, you know, you're kind of committed at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's something that the board's interested in, the way I was going to approach it was to kind of come up with a plan and a layout and be able to talk about, you know, this is what it would look like, islands, landscaping, that sort of stuff. Then also having the discussion of if you do that, then where do we have, you know, do we create a space still in there to do spring cleanup day? I mean, we're not going to be wanting to dump 40-yard dumpsters on a brand new paved parking lot. You know, where do we do leaf days? Where do we do this? But it is basically in there to have a conversation.
Okay. I would like to expand that conversation before we just look at plans. I appreciate everything that you just said, but before we say, you know, Kevin did all this work and here's the surface parking plan, I think we need to zoom out a little bit and make sure that we're with one of our only kind of large parcels that has a lot of different potentials.
Kevin, could I get clarification? Because I assume the work that you put in there for next year would be I would call it right-of-way work. So it doesn't matter what we do to the lot, we're still building the sidewalk next to the right-of-way, no matter what we do there. And that would be separate than any kind of paving and the islands and the landscaping, or is that not true?
So the way it's kind of split out is we talked about like pouring the curb and gutter necessary, both internally and sidewalk type things.
Okay.
Getting conduit in for potential lighting, irrigation, that sort of stuff. And then, so the 2 years, that's the 1 year, first year cost. The second is actually paving it. So, you know,
My comments, I think Heather brings up a really good point, that there's a high likelihood that we won't be able to do all our projects within budget. And I would say this is a low priority because I don't know where, until we know what we want to do with leaf collection and stuff, I kind of like having that as a dirt lot. But I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
I would agree. It doesn't seem like a high priority
Right. Well, and I do think we are dealing with a different reality in housing than we were when we bought that lot. Because I think I raised the question of like, oh, well, what if we did parking underneath and housing above? And I think Jay, responded, well, maybe that's not the best use. Maybe we could get a different lot. But that was 2 years ago, and it's a whole different world now. It feels like it, although housing would be extremely expensive to build right now. So, but I wouldn't. I agree that I think it should be a low priority, but I wouldn't rule out just having another discussion on and maybe it's part of our housing discussion. What are our options? What are our options at our new public works addition? Because we mentioned that a little bit as part of, just like, can we step back and look at what we have? Or maybe it's just 3 units over on the corner next to those existing units, and then it's parking, or I don't know. I just think we could get creative if we need to.
Other thoughts?
And I just have one more item.
Just, does anybody feel different that no, we should absolutely do the curb and gutter? Or do folks agree that it should be low priority? And basically we would ask for you to check in before you start any work on that. Fair?
Low
Okay.
priority, yes.
Low priority.
Kevin.
all I was gonna throw out there just to confuse the situation is I do think there would be merit in talking about finishing the sidewalk connection from Colorado Place over to here, regardless of what that becomes.
But so, right, so I agree. And my question earlier was meant to say, no matter what we do, whether we put housing there or a parking lot, that sidewalk's gonna have the same alignment essentially, because it's based on the right of way. Okay, I would agree with that.
And I could support that as a first step.
Okay.
My other question, another big one that we're not going to solve tonight, but I'm glad to see the roundabout and industry place in here with some, I know, very general ballpark estimates a couple years out. I think we know that that's not immediate, but I think we feel a sense of not urgency, but a sense of priority around the roundabout based on the level of development going on the 133 corridor. So I don't really have a specific question other than like, what are we going to do in the next 2 years to prepare for that potential 2024 expenditure? And what's the thinking behind putting that in 2024 versus a year earlier or later?
The thinking about where it is based on my belief in a reality, a real schedule to actually do construction. As we discussed, I think it was last meeting, we are working on designs. There are some tricks, just like there are everywhere with that site. So we're working through that. Then you're going to have to get into talking about right-of-way acquisition potentially and those sorts of things. So by the time you work your way all through that process, I don't think it's realistic to think it could be built next year in 2023.
Okay. To that point though, so I'm our representative to the ITPR Commission for CDOT, but we've never had any projects. So
What's that generally?
it's sort of the regional, it's CDOT's regional committee. So it's where you go to talk about projects. So I'm sure Glenwood's there every time, But Kevin, just let me know if me proposing this or whatever, getting that in the queue or whatever might be advantageous.
You know, we talked about that. We actually had a meeting of all the communities. Probably was in 2019 because it was in person and it was down in Garfield County, but county commissioners were there and all the communities. And we talked about how is CDOT going to prioritize funding? And, you know, I don't have a strong belief that this would rise to the level of going through that, just with all the other regional priorities.
Yeah, I agree, but that's why I say just keep me posted if you think me speaking up.
And I would just say it'd be good for even the public to be aware, like if we can get updates on that planning and stuff throughout the next couple of years, I think people want to see that we have a plan there, that we're moving forward with it. You know, the design's being done. It's, you know, it's in the office, right? It's not at a public meeting. But if there's any sort of update that we can get and to just kind of get people aware that that is coming, we have a plan, we're working on it. And I think the more design and everything that we get done with, whether there's a infrastructure bill that ever passes in the federal government or anywhere else, who knows? But it seems like sometimes they're looking for these shovel-ready projects, and I'd love to have that shovel-ready, you know, when we can, to try to get some external support, because that's going to be really hard for us to come up with $2.5 million for that, obviously.
And I think we probably stand a chance of getting support from other folks in the valley. You know, I throw this out just as an observation, but RAFT is kicking in money into the one in Aspen. I don't know why they wouldn't kick in something here. So I do think we have regional partners that we can talk to as well.
But isn't that because RAFTA uses that as a corridor though? I don't see how RAFTA would be using that space, that roundabout.
Be a stretch.
Yeah.
They go up 133 on their route every day.
I mean,
You're right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a
much-
different location. Yeah.
Much lesser degree, but
Yeah, much
yeah,
lesser.
still, it opens up Pandora's box. Heather.
I like doing that.
If just all of this was a conversation about the further, 5 years out. If we take all of the stuff that is allocated for 2022, in terms of the draft that we've seen now, that number was already in there, and the reserve percentages that we've been talking about already have all of these wrapped into it.
Yes.
I just had one little simple question that I thought of. I thought the Historical Society did a great job over in RVR, and for the new sign at the cemetery, I thought it might be nice to offer if the Historical Society wanted to add anything to that sign. It's meant to be an information kiosk, but I don't know if there's anything historical about our cemetery or not, but if there was, we can offer that to them. So that's my big idea. That's where my head's been. Okay, any other thoughts on the CIP budget? Okay. My only other question on the budget or comment was just looking at the third quarter financial report. Tell me if I misread it, but it sounded like we may want to revisit our projections for the tobacco and tax. But that was just my only observation in the comment I made as I read that. So,
Renee can jump in if she has a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, we will be reviewing all of our projections later in our budget process. But yes, I am watching that very closely, Dan.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts on the budget? Okay, great work. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Kevin.
I just realized a typo just for you, Kathy, in my 5-year projection in 2025 for potential grant funding, it's not 900,000, it's 90.
Hate
Yeah.
when zeros get added.
Been there, didn't need to be there.
I would just say as a side note, I appreciate your color coding there, the carryover from the 2020 budget being in yellow especially, because you know, a lot of these projects, we budget it for 1 year, it gets carried over to the next, and then it's hard for us to keep track sometime. Are we budgeting new money or is that old money? So that made it much easier for me to see what's new and what's carried over.
Me too, yes.
Yeah. Seem like valid expenses and good prioritization of a whole lot of conflicting needs. That's what local government's all about, right?
Eric, anything you wanted to add, or is it all self-explanatory?
You know, pretty self-explanatory, but just some good news. We did just receive information that we did receive a grant from the Colorado River District for $100,000 on the Crystal River restoration project. So yeah,
That's great.
Congratulations.
Nice
getting
job.
there.
By piece.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Right, so with that, any questions on the reports?
No.
Okay. We good to go into executive session? Right, well, so Bowden, you get to go home and eat dinner?
Yes.
Thanks for being here, bud. Participating.
Is there a motion to go into an executive session? Motion by Erica, seconded by Lonnie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. And I'll